She's the author of the new book, Giannis, the Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP, about a book about the man that I've been telling you guys, if you are a casual or an intermediate basketball fan, this is the guy you should be a fan of, because Giannis embodies everything sports fans say they should love. And we will talk about Giannis right now with Mirin Fader from The Ringer right now here on 97.3 ESPN. Mirin, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you jumping on. So anytime anybody writes a book, I love the first question to be this. Why this topic? What drew you to Giannis?
He is not just an amazing dominant basketball player. He has a human backstory that is so interesting and compelling. And when I see him on the court, I have so many questions, We only know so little about him. Sold trinkets on the street, becomes a superstar. There's like nothing in between. So I just thought, let me write a book and try to find answers to those questions.
So when you were going through the process of doing this, where did you feel like you had to start? Because with Giannis, there's so much there. And obviously the book, you go into very deep detail about it. So where did you have to start for you to feel like you were getting that best parts of the story?
To be honest, birth. I mean, I found out that the family actually hadn't intended to come to Greece. They actually went to Germany because their dad, Charles, was a soccer player and he had an opportunity there. When he got injured, that's when they came to Greece. So for me, it was like, how can I figure out this family's journey from the get-go, from the beginning? Why did they even leave Nigeria in the first place? Because it's just so important to ground this story geographically, racially, so many different identities to work with that I really needed to process before I even got to age 13, where he picks up a basketball.
Now, you mentioned about his family coming from Nigeria, going to Greece. We know for Giannis, family is a huge deal for him. And I think that, to me, when you listen to him do interviews, he talks about his brothers, he talks about his family. And to me, Giannis is refreshing, because in a world where so many athletes, let's be realistic, a lot of these guys, they might be nice, decent people, but they're self-absorbed. They come from some privileged backgrounds. They come from environments where they played AAU basketball. They got college scholarships. Giannis had none of that. And to me, the fact that he is still in touch and so in tune with his background, his family, to me is refreshing.
It's so refreshing. I mean, one of my favorite anecdotes while reporting this book was talking with Jared Dudley. And Jared told me that he had to convince Giannis at age 21 to move out of his home with his mother. For us, we'd be like, okay, yeah, I need to go out on my own. But for Giannis, he's like, no, this is absurd. Like, that's my mother. I want to live with her. And so there's close, and then there's Giannis and his family close. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and it should be celebrated.
The book is Giannis, the Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP. It debuts August 10th. You can pre-order it right now over at Amazon. Mirin Fader joining us here on Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN. I mentioned the fact that he's so different than other athletes. And I think that in today's world, Giannis became a champion and an MVP, I think, at the perfect time. Because in a world where, let's be realistic, this is the first NBA Finals in maybe 15 years at least that we haven't had a villain, right? There are people who don't like LeBron, people who don't like Kevin Durant, there are people who don't like all these guys. There's nothing you can dislike about Giannis. That's why I've been saying that this book is perfect, because this is the time for this book to come out and say, hey, you want to know more about Giannis? Which I know I certainly do. I feel like I need this book in my life at this point. This is the guy you can latch on to. The guy's going to Chick-fil-A and ordering chicken nuggets, for goodness sake, and then putting it out on social media. Like, there's so much good wholesomeness with him that I think it gets overlooked and underappreciated.
It does. And also keep in mind that he's undercovered. And I don't know if that's because he's international or whatever. I think the NBA needs to do a much better job of highlighting stars like Giannis's story. Like, just like we know so little about Giannis, we know so little about Joker. We know so little about Luka. Like, how? These are the faces of our league, and we don't know anything about them. And they're not lacking in personality, and they're not lacking in human interest stories. They're not lacking in fascinating backstories. We've got to do a better job of being the connective tissue in terms of storytelling, because there is so much here for these guys.
You mentioned about how the NBA can promote them more. Do you think part of that is because Joker's in Denver, Giannis is in Milwaukee? even Luka and sometimes doesn't get as much coverage as he could. He's in Dallas. They're not in LA. They're not in New York. For example, Joel Embiid in our backyard, he's in Philadelphia. And, he walks down the street in Margie, people are taking pictures and putting on social media, right? It's just a different world in those bigger cities. You think that has something to do with it?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, even look at just the amount of times that the Bucks were broadcast. There's so much bias against Milwaukee, and that's why I think it's really cool what they've done this year because they were like, okay, you don't want to put us primetime. Okay, you don't want to give us our respect. Okay, you don't think we're contenders. Okay, you don't want to write about us. Chris Middleton should be a profile from every outlet. And then it seemed like everybody rushed to do the Chris Middleton story
Right.
in the last possible moment of the playoffs, So I hope this changes things. Small market teams are not just small market teams. They're teams with wonderful players with interesting, compelling stories. And, when Giannis said, like, I did it the hard way, like, I didn't go to a super team. Like, I don't know. I feel like we really need to take that statement seriously. He's doing it different than anyone else. He is probably the most different, the most unique modern day superstar I've ever seen.
Do you think also part of it is because Giannis is a good human being that he doesn't get as much coverage sometimes? Because I feel like we live in a society, people are infatuated with the negative. People are obsessed with the bad. We don't talk about the good things athletes do enough. J.J. Watt raises all that money a couple of years ago for Houston in hurricane relief. All people can say is, well, J.J. Watt can't stay healthy. It's like, but he just raised like $30 million to help people. Do you think that's part of the problem that we look at Giannis or we look at a guy like Steph Curry and like, oh, they're too nice, they're too wholesome, there's not enough flaws there?
Yeah, it's part of it. I mean, look at the Kyrie thing. He does a lot of humanitarian work outside, and we never hear about it. We just hear about the negative about Kyrie. But it's also because I think in Giannis in particular, because we're talking about him, I think that for whatever reason, it goes beyond, oh, he's so wholesome, I don't want to talk about that. It's that the things that are core to Giannis's identity, work ethic, being a good person, being a good teammate, those are not quote unquote sexy. But really, ask any athlete, that is the blueprint for success. It is very simple. Work your hardest, sacrifice. I guess that doesn't make a compelling enough narrative for some people, but, I don't really get it because when I look at Giannis and I see how he goes from goofball to profit real quick, I think this guy should be on every billboard. This guy should be on every magazine. This guy should be on every commercial. He is interesting. And you want to put interesting people forward.
Again, the book is Giannis, The Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP. You can pre-order it right now. It comes out August 10th. Mirin Fader joining us right now to talk about Giannis, the rise of an NBA MVP, which at this point has to be addended to rise of a champion, I think at this point. You might need to come out a couple of new editions in the next year. Maybe come out with a special edition paperback cover, kind of thing. You might have to do that, Mirin.
I know. I kind of think we're in conversations about what to do with that exactly. When we came out with the book, we thought, okay, like he'll be in free agency. That'll be so relevant, and then Giannis is like, actually, I'm going to do it completely different. I'm going to announce it in December, leaving you with not knowing how to end your book. Obviously, I don't matter in Giannis's world. But, so I could have never predicted this. And you might see a new epilogue in new editions for me.
Have you gotten any feedback from Giannis or his people on the book?
Not to me directly. I don't know what they think. They certainly have read it. So I don't know.
So maybe then no negative news is good news kind of thing then.
I mean, I'm sure it's a completely flattering book, and all my interviews with the family and with Giannis were very positive. And the book is also, in addition to just a very flattering portrayal, it's a love letter to the city of Milwaukee and the Bucks, and it gets into the real deep historical roots of this organization and all the struggles they've been through. So for sure, I mean, I can't see anyone feeling negative about it. I feel like this book, my hope with it was to dignify the city. And, all these years they've been ragged on and mocked and gone through despair. This book really hopes to dignify their stories and how they kept believing in this team and this one-of-a-kind lifetime player that they managed to miraculously get.
It's interesting you say that because I was listening to an interview with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar after the finals were done. And he mentioned about how happy he was for Giannis and the city. And he talked about the fact that, when he was there, the ownership was different, the team environment was different. He says, but the city has always been a good town. It's always been a good group of people. And for Kareem, he was saying, I'm happy for the city. And I think that's a very interesting correlation because the guy who wins the first championship since Kareem was there happens to be Giannis, and they both have that appreciation for the city of Milwaukee.
Yeah, Kareem is actually a very substantial part of the book because I charted when he left and the hole that left in the hearts of Wisconsinites. He didn't just leave. A generational player didn't just leave. He said, Milwaukee's too small for me.
Right.
I need a big city. This is, it was not an amicable move back then. It's really awesome to see Kareem embrace Milwaukee now, but it was really painful when he left. And it created, as I say in the book, this feeling of leaving. The best players always leave. The team is in peril of leaving. Milwaukee almost pulled a Seattle. Like they literally almost left the city of Milwaukee. So it is so wonderful to see not just the fact that Kareem has embraced Milwaukee, but that Giannis, it's almost symbolic. The generational player finally stays that they've been waiting for since Kareem left. Giannis has almost patched up a 50-year-old wound that is very, very real.
Do you think Giannis staying and winning, how do you think that could impact the rest of the league? Do you think this might, change some people's perceptions of their markets or change their perceptions of how team building can be done at all?
You know what? I was thinking about this, and at first I thought, wow, this could be a trendsetter. But then I think, no, I think Giannis is just built differently than everyone else. I don't think you're going to find a modern day superstar who would choose to go to a small market team like this. I think Giannis is just his own breed, his own class. And I think there's certainly going to be negative reactions to him saying, I didn't do a super team. It's a little spice. And I think that, there's always been some sort of separation between Giannis and other players in terms of he doesn't work out with them. He doesn't like to do the whole, work out with other famous players and have the social clout that comes off of that. So, I think that Giannis is in a class of his own, and I don't really see people emulating it. In fact, I can't see why anyone would resent him, but I can see a little resentment in that case.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think it's resentment or maybe a little jealousy? Because maybe some of those other
jealousy.
players, look at him and they realize, hey, man, I played AAU basketball. I was on the cover of all these newspapers and magazines. I went to, for example, Anthony Davis going to Kentucky or LeBron being crowned the king for ever played in the NBA. Is there maybe a part of them that looks at him like, man, this guy literally came from nothing and had to earn every inch that he has gotten, and he got to the mountaintop on his own terms. And maybe guys like, for example, Kevin Durant, maybe look at him and there's a little side eye in their eye.
I mean, I think that there's always been side eyes. I for sure think there's a lot of jealousy. I mean, Harden's comments about Giannis not having skill to me is laughable. And there's always been that narrative that he only gets by on athleticism and not actual basketball skill. And it's just insane. Do you know how much skill it takes to have the court vision and awareness to know how to time a block perfectly? Timing a block is not just, wow, I have this body and it knows what to do. He's so intelligent, but people don't give him credit for his high basketball IQ, which is even more impressive if you think of the fact that he didn't even really start playing basketball regularly until age 16. So you're talking about somebody with that kind of instincts on the court that only has a decade under their belt. So, I think maybe superstars might side-eye him, but look at Bobby Portis. If I'm a Bobby Portis type of guy, I want to play with Giannis. I'm calling him up. I'm doing whatever I can to get on the court with this guy. Some of my favorite interviews with the book were the 16th man. Tim Frazier, great interview. He was telling me that he was just trying to make the Bucks team as a 16th man. And Giannis would stay after practice and work with him and say, Tim, what plays do you want to run? Tim is you're Giannis Antetokounmpo. What do you want to run? You know what I mean? And so I just, that right there says it all. That's the kind of leader I would love to play with a player like that.
And that's the kind of stories I'm looking forward to in this book, Giannis, the Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP, because, for the average person, okay, for example, to be selfish for a minute, to me, Giannis represents meritocracy. The fact that you earn something, because for people like myself, we come from nothing, okay? We didn't have the Catholic school to go to. We didn't have, the scholarships to hand over to. So people like me, we look at Giannis and we're like, this is an example of what can happen, as Giannis said after the press conference. If you want something, you can never let anybody tell you can't do it. And I know for someone like me, I'll admit it, I put a tear in my eye. I was like, yeah, man, you're speaking to me, So like there's something about him that is just reaches across, culture and everything in society because of who he is. And that's what I love about him. I'm so looking forward to reading in this book.
Yeah, and that's why when I hear people say, oh, he's not relatable, he can't be the face of the league because he's international, I'm like, are you kidding? This is the ethos of the American dream. We are a nation of immigrants. We know what it is like to work hard. Giannis represents the best of us, honoring your mother, looking at every day like this could be your best day, even when you have no money in your pocket, nurturing your brothers, trying to cheer them up when things are bad, transforming your body, not being intimidated by the fact that you're getting knocked around and you're scrawny your rookie year, and you just transform and work and work and work to get better. That should be something that we all strive to emulate.
So let me ask you this. Giannis is 26 years old. He turns 27 before the end of the year. How much better do you think he can get? Because let's be realistic. Someone with that kind of basketball IQ, with that kind of athleticism, it's not like he's old. It's not like he's like Chris Paul and 36 and he's closer to the end of the beginning. No, he's technically not even in his prime yet. So what do you think the future holds for him?
He's going to get so much better. Look at the growth even in the final series. Giannis became a reliable free throw shooter. I don't know why nobody's talking about that. I was joking with my dad. I was like, is he going to win this game off of free throws? Because I think I will absolutely lose my shit if he wins it off of a free throw. You know what I mean? That's just too much. That I can't. If that was how it happened, I would have just died. But yes, look at that alone. He seemed to be even more comfortable with free throws as the series went on. I think at one point he was like 11 for 13 on free throws. So this is a person that can get so much better. Remember in the earlier playoffs, people were like, he doesn't understand his body. He's shooting threes. He needs to go to the basket. And then towards the end of playoffs, he seemed, except for the occasional three, he seemed to really understand his best powers are going downhill and going inside. So look at that growth from 3 weeks time period. Injured. So imagine him full speed next year and in the coming years. Somebody who's really just addicted to playing basketball has to be told to leave the gym. There's so much more for him to accomplish. And I don't know. I just think somebody like him will always come up with something. Even when you think there's nothing left for him to get better at, Giannis will come up with some niche thing like, oh, the way I have to cut needs to be sharper. The way I turn my foot needs to be better coming off a screen. Like, he's that detail oriented. He will always find something to get better at.
Well, to learn more about Giannis, the book is Giannis, the Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP, written by Mirin Fader of The Ringer. It comes out August 10th. You can pre-order it now at Amazon. Audiobook, hardback, whatever your style is. For me, I'm an audiobook guy, but I know some people like to sit at the beach, they like to put the book in their hand, sit out there for a few hours. So whatever your flavor is, again, the book is Giannis, the Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP. And we're glad to have had Mirin Fader joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Thank you so much for jumping on the show. I'm so much looking forward to this book, and I wish you so much success with it.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy it, and I really appreciate you having me on.